Welcome back. So, slight change of plans. Zoom in, there we go. So, CV joints. We've got inner CV joints, which I'll put on in a minute. We've got an array of bolts that have been degreased. Just need to clean those up, paint those. Numerous bits and bobs, bolts over there that are being cleaned up. Some bell housing bolts, flywheel bolts, etc, etc. So we've also got 3 engine mounts on their way for that. So once the engine mounts are in, CV joints are on, I've also got a clutch on the way. So once the clutch turns up, that big lump I can stick onto there and pop it into there. So for interest purposes, this is the inner CV joints. I've gone for the J&R group once again. Some people might say these are cheap and cheerful, but when you research the actual company, they're still built to the same ISO standards as the bigger names. 3-year warranty. Pretty good ones. I've used them before on other cars. Nice bits of kit for the price. So a nice strong rubber boot, nice and flexible as well, which is what you want. You can get some cheaper ones which are actually hard, which you don't really want, because you get a hard one, it's gonna, any flexing it's gonna end up split. So we've got that side of it. We've got CV boot, small clip, only that in because that end bolts through with the bolts onto the actual hub on the gearbox. Nice pack of grease, and then the important bit, the CV joint, or constant velocity joint. If I can get out of the bag. There we go. Yeah, so nice new CV joint. So I'll get that ram full of grease. Right, you want pretty much all of that stuck right inside there as best as you can. Don't worry about getting dirty hands. Get a pair of gloves on, and just cover it in there. If you've got a big tub of grease, like that kind of size tub of grease, when you're doing bearings, is just chuck the bearing in the tub. So if that was a tub of grease, just whop the whole bearing there, just get it in there, get all the grease worked right in. Because if you just squirt all the grease in that boot, put a bit around there and put it on, thinking it will work its way through, it will eventually, but the time it's going to take to do that, you're going to get a lot of wear caused inside there. So that's the kit you're going to get. You can buy some kits with the bolts, but I've already got bolts, so it's pointless doing that. So that's the CV joint inner one. They're both exactly the same, left and right hand side. So let's get those fitted. There we go, 2 CV joints on. All clipped up, gloves on the end, tucked out of the way. So then we are ready to start probably getting the engine on the engine crane, so I can support that out of the way, probably rest on a tyre, a big blanket or something so don't scratch anything. And then I'm ready to get the gearbox out and then get things ready to bolt together and put on. I haven't shown much on the engine bay of late because it's been covered up. That's just got the wiring loom in it, so it doesn't rattle around and scratch everything. Airbox is in, the top of the airbox is on, the air cone on there, that I've modified that, so that sort of more mimics the motorsport, VW motorsport one. Oh, that's not tight enough, I can pop that off. Yeah, so my cone's a hell of a lot bigger than the standard one, but I've not just widened the cone, the actual air flap in the bottom. Standard is 80mm, and that's 88, so I've got a larger actual throttle plate or air flap, and then this has been machined out to, it's got 3, same as normal ones, it's got 3 different sort of deep areas. You've got a sort of flat section, which is your idle sort of mid-range, and it dips up a little bit outwards, which is sort of your transition into sort of from idle to mid-range, and then sort of about there-ish it goes a bit more out, which goes from mid-range up to full throttle. We've got a standard way for the standard cork gasket on there, so it looks more original. Just pop that back on there. It's on there. Yeah, lines have been cleaned up. They're the standard fuel lines, these. Just rub them down, primed, cleaned up. It's got to get a sticker made up to go on there, like the original plate. This has got this factory cold air sort of intake kind of type on it, which is just this part here, which clips on the back of the headlight, goes in that box, so you've got air coming, can't see it, but sort of in the headlight there into that hole. What else we've done, there's one thing I've done on this restoration as well, is the wings have been painted with the car on. I'm trying to get the car as close to a factory as it would be, not going over the top, because I want to use it as well. So when I sprayed this, the wings have all been prepped behind, rubbed down, primered, painted behind there. They're just black, generic black on there, so they're protected. The wings were then bolted on. I put the bonnet on, made sure all the shut lines were right, with the bonnet, mainly sort of that back quarter area. Once I was happy with that, then I tightened all the nuts down where they were, then it was prepped and sprayed. I'm not too worried about this end, because the wings actually, when you put all the scuttle panel on, or this panel, the wings will actually come in and out of touch when you tighten it all up. So that's one thing I've done, little things like that. I tried to keep original, better light on that side, so because from the factory the cars would have had the wings on, they were just dunked in the tanks, cleaned, sprayed and prepped all that way. So try and do little things like that to keep it as original as I can. All the brake lines are in. I've refurbed all the brake lines, the whole vehicle. The brakes are all bled, so the brakes are working. Not much else we've got to do in there really. The radiator is a standard radiator was on there, just 16 valve radiator. That was just cleaned up. Then I just bung the ends up, mocked up a pressure thing on it, stuck, I think it's about 2 bar in there of air pressure. Water pressure's only like 14, 15 psi. So yeah, that held air plenty long enough, so there's no point in replacing it if it still works. It wasn't leaking in the first place. I've got to change that fan switch though before I forget. The bottle, that's not a new bottle, that was the old one cleaned out, and that was literally cleaned out with what did I use? Not boiling water because I don't want to melt it, but very, very hot water. I think I put loads of fairy liquid in and some rice, closed it up and just shook it around like mad for ages, 15-20 minutes, let it sit for a while and just rinse it out, and it comes out absolutely clean like that, which is pretty cool. I did buy a new one of those because the old one just wouldn't clean up, and they were cheap enough to buy new ones and still look original. So yeah, not much else to tell on that. And on to the next bit. So postman's been today, more bits dropped off. So we've got front engine mount. Now this is the early type, which in my eyes is a better design, because the type after this has got like, instead of that section, it's got like a cup that goes over and it sort of grips on, and it's very easy for, if you're launching it, for that to go pop and pop off. So that's the early 16 valve type mount. So that's just a Febby one. So that's that. And then we've got another one, which was a Febby one, but this came, this is the rear hydro mount, sits on the back of the engine mount, goes on that one there, also around the other way. Again, this is the most expensive one, but then expensive, I'll say that was 25 quid I think, that was 16, and the other one was 11. And I've also got, I need bolts for, now, ignore those, they're flyer ones. Now, these are the bolts for gearbox and bellows and etc. I sort of started cleaning them, but Mr. Brendan Moss is doing a lot of refurbs and stuff, so he's sending stuff away to get stripped and coated. So I thought, well, while we're there, I'll get some new bolts. And bear with, there we go. So for example, that's what came off the car. You can see that's the colour it would have been when it was new, sort of that bronzy sort of colour. Right, and that's one that's been refurbed, so you can tell the difference. It comes out really nice clean original colour. So I've got a set of those. They're the starter motor bolts, gearbox bellows and bolts, and a gearbox mount bolt. So that's all those. The other two mounts, the other mount is in, so I'll get these two fitted in. And there we have a gearbox and an engine ready to go together. So I've got the engine crane out. Didn't have the strap I had for it when I took it out. I wasn't too concerned when I was taking the engine out, but I don't want to scratch anything putting it back in. So one useful old timing belt, 2 spare little clips off the drive shafts. It's doubled over so it didn't link together. Nice bit of a cloth around there. So the worst case it's going to do is mark something underneath there where I can't see. There we go. So I just need to get the bits ready, clutch and firewall together, make sure I'm happy, lift it up, get the box together, and then get the car backwards and get it inside the engine bay. So onto that. And we have the final part, clutch. Now, some people who know clutches, have worked in the industry or the cradle or trade or whatnot, would think, oh no, not a clutch, terrible. But ignore that name, look at that name, because that name is the company that produces that name, but it's also the company that produces the likes of INA and FAG and everything else. And INA are one of the best types of bearings, pulleys, tensions and things you're going to get, which are fitted to genuine VWs, etc. So ignore what Luck says if you think Luck are terrible clutches. That's the company who actually produced them. They all produce, if you look at the bottom of there, Luck, INA and FAG are all produced by that company. Not going to try and pronounce it. Anyway, clutch. So, not going to go for an uprated clutch, as I've said previous videos, because I'm not. Don't see the point at the moment. Just want to get a clutch on it, get it working. If I find that this starts to slip or whatnot, then it'll be time to upgrade the clutch, and at that time I'll then probably put a diff in the gearbox. So, good quality clutch, new pressure plate, new flywheel bolts, and the new clip and spring which goes inside there. Now, unlike normal clutches, I say normal clutches that work on an arm inside the gearbox with a thrust bearing going pushing the clutch in and out, VW ones, or these ones, work with a push rod. So this metal bit, that sits inside there with a spring on it, and there's a rod that comes from here through the gearbox to a bearing at the other end, and then a little lever, and that's how the clutch release mechanism works on these. So there's a clutch. All I'm going to do is give the flywheel just some 320 grit sandpaper, just so that's the stuff, clean a bit now. Give this a nice clean up surface in there, so you've got a nice clean surface to go on there. These come, they have got a sort of a groove pattern on there just to help give grip. So that's all ready to go on. Engine's ready and a gearbox is ready. So I'll lift the engine up and start getting the gearbox and clutch on. Right, so there we have 2 parts on. This is the sort of shield plate which covers the bottom part of the gearbox when it's open. Breastplate on, and we do have, the reason you always put new bolts on there is because these can stretch. 12.9, they also come in a little bit of standard fit Loctite. So this does go on one way, as you can see the alignment, so I'll get the bolts in next. And there we go, that's all those bolts in there. Torqued up, there is a thin sort of disc that goes behind them, so they're all in there. They torque up to 100 Newton meters, so that's all been torqued up. And now I've just got to put a little plate in which sits, it's got 3 alignment studs. That sits in there like that. And you've got a spring. Which goes in those 2 little holes there. And they've got to sit like that. So it goes in the 2 holes behind that tab, behind that one, behind that one. So that is a flywheel torqued on, new studs and the end cap. And now to the clutch. One bit of advice doing a clutch: try the disc on the gearbox shaft first. My first GTI I was doing a 2 litre bottom end conversion with the 8 valve, and done the bottom end on there, and then gearbox from the floor. and I had the 2 litre bottom end, had the clutch on it. I thought that's fine, clutch, I'll leave it on there. So grovelled around, put my gearbox on there, went to drive it, nothing, took it back off. The clutch splines from the Mark II Golf are a different size to the Mark III Golf, where the engine came off. So always double check, make sure it fits on there, nice snug, tight fit. There you go, and that is the stud, the rod there that comes from the other end of the gearbox straight through out there and pushes on the plate on the clutch to decompress the clutch. And there we have the flywheel on, so that's all on there. Alignment wise on these, I've generally done it by eye because I've done quite a lot of clutches over the years. You get an eye for it. The alignment tool is like a plastic cup which sits in there and aligns in there, which gives you the gap round. But if you line it up, you can see there's a circle, that circle bit there. Just make sure the gap is all the way even all the way around. And there we are, back in matrimony again. So after a few years, that's the gearbox, clutch, all back together. As you can see from the other video where the gearbox plonked on lovely. Well, there we go. After 3 years, 3 and a bit years. Yeah, it must be 3 years now, February. Just shy of 3 years, and the engine is back in. I had to take a few bits off. Crank pulley, power steering bracket. I did have to sort of bend the power steering bracket out of the way because I riveted on. Hopefully I haven't got many scratches in there, but she's in. So yeah, much chuffed with that. A few scratches, yes, only tiny ones. Where is it? A little bit of a scuff just there. All in all, she's in. Looking awesome. This side wasn't too bad, I just caught it. That looks terrible, all dusty. I just caught the pulley on there. Button, I'll touch a few bits up, but she's in. Looking lovely, so what I'll do, I'll get this video edited and stick it up. Yeah, and the clutch was also an early birthday present for me, with thanks to the wife and the in-laws. So, good bit of dedication to those. Lovely.